The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it Mondays here. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you. Hope you're doing all right. Hope you had an incredible weekend. Another night win for the Big Red against Northern Iowa. It is on to Illinois week. The Champagne Room. Will it be festive and happy about midnight on Friday night? We will see. We'll dive into some thoughts on Nebraska to this point. You're always welcome to join the chat here on Hail Varsity Radio, 489-1240, 489-1240, or 800-825-5865 along the Hail Varsity Radio network. Jump in the stream. The water is warm and beautiful. Hail Varsity YouTube is where you log on, subscribe, like, do all those things, and check us out in the stream. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter can also watch the show. Catch up with the show that way. Follow at HVarsity Radio. Find Elijah on Twitter at Herbal Essence. Myself, Chris Schmidt, at Schmidt_radio. So there are things that we are in pursuit of. Elijah, you are in pursuit of saving and retaining golf balls. I am in pursuit of scoring in the low 80s on the golf course. Nebraska in pursuit of beating a ranked team for the first time since when?
I believe the stat's 2014. Oh, sorry, at home?
Yeah, at home.
At home? You got to go back to the last time they beat a ranked team at home. Was that Michigan State?
2011.
No.
Was Oregon ranked in 2016? Or
they were not.
Okay.
So when I know we have to go back a while.
Oregon wasn't ranked?
Oregon was not.
Okay.
I know you have to go back for a ranked v. ranked matchup. You have to go back to, is that UCLA?
Yeah, you do. And Nebraska was up 20-3 in that ball game, the infamous black uniforms. And then I interviewed Jim Mora Jr. after that game, and UCLA ended up winning 41-21.
Because I want to say
21-3.
I want to say the last time you beat a ranked opponent at home, regardless of what you were ranked, was Michigan State 2016. Correct?
When you were both ranked, though, 2011.
Yeah, but I'm saying just beating a ranked team in general at home has been since 2016, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Kirk Cousins, 2011, Levante David, and then you lost to Northwestern the following week. So there's it's been a while. It's been a while. You've got the 400th sellout. You've got Tim Brando and crew. Fox Big is coming to town Friday night, and we'll just kind of hash it out. We'll see what's up. But I have this for you, 489-1240, or in the stream. We'll get our starting five shout-outs going on. First and foremost, how was your weekend? Good?
Friday? Fantastic.
Okay.
Saturday? Great.
What'd you do at the table?
Oh, we're going to talk about, I don't think we brought that up on the air.
But I'm not, there's lots of different tables you can go to. Could be a cafeteria. Could be a kitchen table.
We'll say it like this. Papa paid off his flight to L.A. for the USC game.
So Elijah in an illicit, illegal backroom gambling den won at poker.
Yeah.
Well played.
I also got a new head cover for my driver, too.
Look at you. You did make some money, Daddy. Pretty good. Okay, so I'm not like outing you, but you got together with some friends and played some poker.
For chips.
For chips, right. For Skittles.
Just Skittles.
For Skittles.
Yeah.
So Elijah had a big old weekend.
And then Saturday, obviously, Husker game, great. Sunday was one of the worst days I've had in a long time.
How's this?
Oh, let's go through it. You started off 8 a.m. North London Derby.
Right, so you're
Tottenham
watching
Arsenal.
soccer. You start your day off with soccer. There's already a problem.
That's where
there.
things went wrong. Tottenham loses against their hated rival 1-0. That was rough. Great recording of the Average Joe Sports Show.
Yep,
Following
good
that.
pod.
So that was great. That was the highlight of the day. And then the fantasy team gets absolutely murdered. All my players are in play. My opponent still has one left to play. I'm down 137-64. I got slaughtered in fantasy. The Broncos are horrible.
They're really bad.
They're really, really, really bad. Don't give me. Steelers defense is solid, but Bo Nix made him look incredible. I still have some faith in Bo Nix eventually, considering there hasn't been a single rookie quarterback to throw a touchdown yet. Like, hey, you know what? Maybe he's not that much worse than the rest of the rookies, but, ooh, Lord, that was a tough watch. Lost 11 golf balls on the golf course on Sunday. 11. You know how I know it was 11? I brought 11 with me, and they were all gone by the 17th. I didn't even play the 18th. And then I guess my rec league softball team won Sunday night, so that was a good way to end a horrible day. But Sunday was rough after a good couple of days.
Yeah, I grilled and golfed and had a good time. It was nice. Did a pod. It was fun. Now we're back at it. Okay, there's the weekend update. Sexy Grinch, formerly Cruz, says, Bo Nix is horrible. Elijah, give up hope. He's talking in football.
Yeah, I gave up hope on the Broncos years ago.
Yep, the post-Peyton Manning era is very real and
I think that's like about Teddy Bridgewater era Broncos when I gave up.
Yeah, at least you hung on longer. Let's get our starting 5 shout-outs. We'll dive into where you're at. Do you have more questions, or do you feel like you've got enough answers about this Nebraska football team through 3 games as we talk Big Ten play? I have some questions. I have some answers for Nebraska. And listen, there's a lot of folks between the Real Red Reaction Show and even the Average Joe pod we did live Sunday morning, 10:30s, put it in ink to remember, where people think we're being too critical of Nebraska. We're nitpicking. And it's a different era, right? It's a good thing to say, okay, X, Y, and Z, you have some questions about with this football team. Not personally attacking any coordinators or players or coaches. We're just wondering out loud. And by the way, nobody's perfect after 3 weeks. You're not going to have perfect football very often, if ever again, in the college football playoff era. Kirby Smart probably broke a chair and screamed a few obscenities at people on the offensive side of the ball after they escaped with their life against Kentucky. Brian Kelly, they found a way to stay relevant and keep their season alive in a tough environment against South Carolina. And if you're a Nebraska fan and you're not demanding the 90s by any means, you're demanding relevancy in November, you're demanding rankage at some point and maintained rankage for your football team, and you're within striking distance of the Big Ten in December. Okay, you're going into that Iowa game with a chance to get to Indy, and that's the same expectation as those guys in the locker room and that Matt Rhule has. So to say, okay, Northern Iowa was pretty physical. They maybe pushed you around a little bit on the lines of scrimmage, and that's a credit to them. I think they're good. So this isn't deflecting what Nebraska wasn't on Saturday night. It's just that, okay, we need to acknowledge that Northern Iowa is pretty decent, comparatively speaking. Also need to say that shouldn't happen to Nebraska. But it did at times, and Nebraska won comfortably. It did happen, and Nebraska still blew them out. But I think what you're looking for as a Nebraska fan is an A game, a complete game, 4 quarters, and where you're buttoned up on defense, where you're in rhythm on offense. And right now, Nebraska's in rhythm to start out football games. They're outscoring their opponents close to 80-10. So you're getting out to a lead, and you're coming out with a plan. It's the second half where you want to see Nebraska, because there's going to be games they're going to have to come out and score. And it's going to be a back-and-forth football game. And that might be Friday night. So there's still some of those questions right now. What you do have is you have an answer at quarterback. Okay? You have an answer right now if you're Nebraska football with options on offense. And when push comes to shove, you still, Elijah, have an answer with your defensive unit. So going into this ball game, 2 ranked teams, it is going to be some heavy lifting, but you should be able to get it done. And I'm anxious to see Nebraska respond. They don't need to respond in a sense where, all right, it's You lost a game. How do you bounce back? It's response to the thing they've been preaching for a long time. And we'll hear from Matt Rhule in a little bit, your own standard. And I just didn't think the tackling was what it needed to be. Matt Rhule touched on that in his post game. And it's okay. I'm not saying they're bad tackling. No, Tony White and his team are typically really good at tackling. It's the first time they've really had to tackle beef this season. So be able to do it Friday night. But with Nebraska, there's just some questions right now, and we'll get some answers. How do you match up against a team that you should beat, your favorite over, you're playing at home, and a team you beat last year? Can you beat them a different way this year because your offense is different?
Mm-hmm. And some people would call it nitpicking. I want to lay something out that I said yesterday on the Average Joe Sports Show, and that's, I think your response to Saturday night's game changes based on where your expectations are at for this team. I think that's a really important way to qualify this conversation.
Fair to say the expectations have jumped.
And that's just what I was getting into, is based on what you saw in the first 3 games of the season. I think a lot of people came into this season like, you know what, 6-6, 7-5, be completely content with that. I think expectations have raised through what you've seen and heard from this team through the first 3 weeks of the season. And if there are people out there who are happy with 6-6, 7-5, you know what, more power to you. But based on what I've seen, I think this is a team that has enough talent, if they clean some things up, to be a team that can make noise in the conference in November. Mm-hmm. And that's where the nitpicking comes from, if you want to call it that. Like, I don't think you need to qualify and say, man, well, they were so bad for 10 years, we're not in any place to nitpick. Well, yeah,
that's fair, but it's a different world.
That'd be the same as me saying, well, the Broncos, because they cut Russell Wilson, are $70 million over there, or they have $70 million less in cap room this year than everybody else.
Lose.
It's okay they suck. It's okay that their rookie quarterback is struggling. You know what? A 13-6 loss where your offense is stagnant all day, that's fine. That's the expectation of this season. That's not what it means to I guess, follow and analyze a football team. You have to be real with yourself. And if you're being real, Nebraska out-talented that Northern Iowa team by a lot. I don't think they out-executed that Northern Iowa team.
They didn't out-hit them.
And that is a realistic concern to have if you think this team can make noise in November, which I think they can. Again, I think you can be satisfied. I told you to lead off this show, I had a great day on Saturday because Nebraska won a football game, and it makes my job a hell of a lot more fun whenever you're going on a post-game show talking about a win than a loss. I enjoy that a lot more. But at the same time, you can be realistic with yourself and say, this team holds itself to a higher standard than what it put out there on Saturday. And as a journalist, as somebody who covers this football team, it's my job, I think, to be real with you and tell you, you know what? This team needs to be better in their execution and how they come out for an opponent such as Northern Iowa if they want to be a team that makes noise in November.
180. That's the number that I think bothers the coaching staff, and it's not end of the world. They're going to try and fix it this week because that's what Illinois is good at. That's yards after contact. But that's what the number was. 180 yards after first contact, and that's not what Nebraska wants to be about defensively, and it's not what they've been about. So that's kind of the rub for Friday night. How does this team get better and hold up against maybe Illinois' offensive line isn't as good as Northern Iowa's. Maybe it's way better. I don't know where Nebraska's own offensive line is at, because one thing we did know with this season, you're not going to have quarterback run. You saw a couple of times where Dylan was going to keep on a bootleg and he kept on his own read, but you're not going to do that very often this season. It's not that he can't, you just don't want to put him in harm's way. But the running back run game, out of shotgun or under center, how is that? And you've seen a couple of big bursts, but is Nebraska going to be able to line up when the numbers say run the football in the box and get 4, 3, 4, 5 on first down? Is 2nd and 8 going to be a living Friday night? I don't think it needs to be if you're Nebraska and you want to win this football game, because 2nd and 8, 3rd and long, I mean, it's situational, right? So there's a lot of questions to answer, and it should be a pretty good ball game. We'll be out at the Single Barrel Thursday, 4 to 6, 9th and P, and Single Barrel ahead of Nebraska kickoff against Illinois Friday. Single Barrel, 4 to 6. So back-to-back pregame, day before and then day of. Should be pretty good with Real Red reaction following.
And I'm not here, and as we kind of put a bow on this first segment, I'm not here to tell you how you should feel as a fan.
No, I'm just wondering how you do feel.
I am telling you what my response to that game was. And my response to that game was, it's a win. A win in the win column is better than a lot of things we've seen over the past decade, but at the same time, this team still has room for improvement. And it'd be disingenuous of me to say, you know what, that performance was great on Saturday. There's room for improvement from that performance on Saturday. I'm going to tell you where this team can still improve and where they probably still need to improve before Friday.
Let's get your shout-outs here, the starting five. NU Grandpa in first. NASCAR Eric, good to have you. Justin is here. We heard from the Sexy Grinch crew in at 4. Uncle Larry is here. Love Mondays after a win. Elijah's Soup Strainer says, hey, Elijah. Mr. Snitley is here. Jeff is in. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Black Hills Brennan is here. Crazy, not grazing. Crazy Spider Adventures checks in. Dion, good to have you. Brian is here. Rhule has a winning lifetime record, 8-7 as Nebraska's head coach. Let that one sink in. Uncle Jimmy is here. Jack says, what's up? Winning Mondays makes it a lot better. Arlo in. Jeff is here. The other Dave says, what's up? Cliff in Florida, along with the Golden Fang, is here. More of your comments in the stream. We'll check in. Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska Rivals on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. We'll get more of your comments here. How you feeling so far with Nebraska football? Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Tim Verghese is in with Inside Nebraska, Rivals.com. Follow Tim on Twitter at Tim Verghese. Tim, it's Big Ten football Friday night, man. How we doing?
Muted.
Tim is muted. He's going to fix that.
Yeah, we're good.
There it is.
He's like, now we got it. Take 2. How's Tim doing, man?
Hey, not too bad. Solid weekend, all things considered, and getting into this little short week. I'm excited to just have kind of a weekend to just watch football across the board instead of having to focus on Nebraska and spending all day in Memorial.
We are all kind of going excellent. There's a Saturday off, which is going to be kind of fun, but Friday it's a short week for Nebraska. Tim, I want your take here. 3-0 is thumbs up for Rhule and co. in year 2. There's some questions. There's some answers you have. What do you think of this football team going into this Illinois showdown here? What questions do you have? What answers do you think Nebraska's found about their identity so far?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we've learned about this team through 3 weeks is I think they have an identity of what they want to be on both sides of the ball. I think the biggest question going into this game is just, can they finish out a game through all 4 quarters? We haven't seen that yet through the first 3 weeks. Can they sustain before? They haven't really had to. So, that's part of it. But against Illinois, you're expecting a tougher test. You're expecting Dylan to have to play through 4 quarters. You're expecting the first unit defense to have to be there till the very end to close out, hopefully potentially a win.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska's opened up as a favorite. But yeah, I just want to see this team be able to finish out games. I think a big question for me, just coming out of last week, and a concern is just the run defense, seeing how they hold up against Caden Fegan this weekend. That's a 6'3", 250-pound running back that's coming into town. Brett Bielema, that team's always going to play a physical style of football, the way Nebraska likes to as well. So curious to see how they hold up in the trenches on both sides against a Big Ten opponent. Can they sustain drives? Can they, get teams off the field, a Big Ten team off the field pretty consistently? I think they've shown defensively the ability to bend but not break. Want to see that continue through Big Ten play. But this is a big week. I think it's a big week to kind of answer some of those questions, kind of stamp yourselves and be like, okay, here's a ranked win. We've done it against a rival, and we did it. We handled business against 2 teams we had to. I think if you take care of business on Saturday, I think we'll have a lot more confidence going into the next stretch of the season where, I think there's some favorable matchups against Purdue, but Indiana's going to be another one that's interesting, and Rutgers as well.
It's Tim Verghese with us here at Hail Varsity Radio as we talk Nebraska, Northern Iowa, some thoughts. We'll get into some recruiting here in just a moment as well. And Tim, overall, I want to get your thoughts with the defensive performance. I think it's clear for a lot of people who watched the game, wasn't the same juice level that you saw against Colorado. Northern Iowa, they controlled the ball. 23 more plays than Nebraska, 17 more minutes of time of possession. They moved the ball pretty well, good on third down, but at the end of the day, they only score 3 points. With all that considered, is that encouraging that Nebraska only allowed 3 points? Are you concerned by what it looked like against Northern Iowa from an eye test point of view and some of the stats? What's your response to how the defense played on Saturday?
Yeah, like I think that the fact that they finished that day with 3 points, considering if you look at every other number from that game, you would think they put up more points. I think that is specifically encouraging. But that first drive, them holding onto the ball for 10 minutes the way they did, that's a little discouraging. That's something that, like, that's a red flag, and that's something that Illinois is going to be able to watch on film and be like, okay, if they can do it, we can try and do that. There's a couple Big Ten teams that are looking at that and kind of, excited about the opportunity to play Nebraska's defense because they feel like they'll be able to hold on to the ball as well. And so for Nebraska, I think it's a good opportunity to be coached hard coming out of what is on paper a dominant win, but one that I think did raise some legitimate concerns for me. And I think factoring in, okay, maybe Jamari Butler and Mekhi Bear are bigger factors to this defense than we initially thought. Maybe the young guys behind them are a little more raw than we thought and are good in specific flash scenarios, but not necessarily down to down, the way Jamari kind of has stepped up into being a down to down defensive end, the way Mekhi Bear has stepped up into being an every down linebacker. I think those two were really missing that first half. So I'm curious to see how much better the defense looks with those two back. And I think the defense learned some things about themselves too. Like in that second half, I think that you're starting to see, okay, Princewill probably needs to be on the field on every third and long situation. Like Kai Wallen gives us something at defensive end. We could afford to have a little more speed at linebacker, and I think you're going to see some personnel movement potentially in the secondary as well. I think you can see them start to tinker a little bit with what they're doing back there once we get into conference play.
Tim, you're right on with kind of the heart and soul of that first and second level with Butler and Bayer. And it picked up in the second half. Tim Verghese with his Inside Nebraska Rivals.com and at Tim Verghese on Twitter. It's where you follow him. So I want to go to and Brian in our stream is asking about the Mauler, Micah the Mauler Mazuka. He is out. He was not in uniform against Northern Iowa either. And this screams Micah Mazuka football game Friday night with his physicality, his attitude, his temperament. And, Henry did a good job at right guard, and he's a highly recruited player himself. But what's your feel here on Mazuka's absence and the effect on the run game? Yeah,
Mazuka's one that's like, again, that's a future NFL player, but it's truly just like off the field. Can he buy into it? And Rhule talked about that back in the spring of just like with him and Steph Thompson specifically, just transferring over and having to get acclimated to culture to buy in. And we've heard things, but obviously not going to speculate here until someone gives an official word here. But I'd expect, I think Nebraska obviously would like to have him back. I think, as highly touted as Henry Lutovsky is, and, he's very solid in that thing, but in replacing Mazuka. But Mazuka himself is just such a mover. Like, you can run behind those guys. Like, I think the biggest thing for me through those first 2 weeks watching this offense was I really felt like this team could solely run behind Ben Scott and Micah Mazuka and just make a living out of that. And Justin Evans as well, who's really good in his own right, a very good pulling blocker in his own right. But you could run behind the interior of the line. And I don't think that's the case anymore with Lutovsky out there, who's still very good and can hold up just fine. But you don't get that push, that consistent push that you do when Micah Mazuka's out there. So, for the team's sake, you'd like to see him back out there at some point this year. But again, it's just, for a program that has a really strong culture right now, you want everyone bought into that, and having one person, especially someone as important as your starting guard that is potentially a future NFL player, not being bought in there, you can't make an exception for a guy like him because that's a bad look to the rest of the team.
It's Tim Verghese with us here. And Tim, a big picture question entering Big Ten play here. Your biggest concern with this Husker football team is what?
That we still haven't seen them being able to close a game. Like, that's still a question that dating back to the previous staff and even last year, just seeing what they look like in close one-game situations, how they're able to close, how they're able to step up. I think a theme with this offensive coaching staff specifically from the last year into this year is they really stall in that middle third of the game, and that's something that I'm keeping an eye on, whether that's something they improve upon against Illinois. And like Dylan kind of negates that a little bit. They were able to get some 2-minute stuff working the last 3 games, before the half. So that's a little bit encouraging. But I've not been super thrilled with the aggressiveness in the second half. I haven't been super thrilled with just certain elements where I feel like, okay, maybe they just don't want to show it. Maybe they haven't had a reason to show it yet. But I need to see this team close some wins before I'm confident in what they're able to do in Big Ten play.
Tim, going to get to recruiting, and we may go a little overtime. I know you're shocked that we might do some overtime with Tim Verghese with Inside Nebraska, Rivals.com. But what was the recruiting weekend like for the Big Red? It was another night game. Who was on hand for Northern Iowa?
Yeah, it was a smaller weekend for Nebraska. Just a handful of guys that actually had offers. The headliner of the weekend, 2026 4-star tight end / athlete Matt Ludwig out of Montana, cousins with Vincent Genatone. I really like where Nebraska's positioned there, but that's a recruitment that I think he's got some national options. He wants to take some national visits, and I think he's going to really not take his time necessarily, but I do think like he's a kid that I think he's going to see some more out there. And I think right now Nebraska's in a really good spot, but I don't think this recruitment's anywhere close to done right now. I think he wants to see some other programs, see the Texas A&M, see the Oklahomas and the Michigans and those type of programs of the world, see what they have to offer, and then compare that to what his experience at Nebraska a couple of times already. He was the headliner. He was a big guy. He was a big name in town. 2027 offensive tackle target Matt Erickson was back in town. He's been back a couple of times. They had a handful of 2026 quarterbacks they're monitoring. Jet Tamala from Millard South, one of them. Rocco Marriott out of Platte County in Missouri, another one. Neither one of those guys have offers from Nebraska right now, but good options, to keep just on the radar. I don't think either are necessarily Big Ten quarterbacks at this very moment, but I think, with continued development, and I like that Nebraska is monitoring those guys and keeping 26 QB options open. Those are some of the headliners. There was a 26 DB I'm intrigued by, Tyrese Parker out of Kansas. He's an interesting young player that's continuing to grow into his 6'3" frame, but moves really well at the position. You kind of like the ball skills he's shown early on. I saw him in a off-season camp circuit event, so I really like kind of the tools there for a young player, but needs some development. Needs to kind of grow into his frame a little bit. But I think it wasn't a great opportunity to kind of showcase that night environment just because of the type of opponent and some of the other games happening around the country. And what's a little unfortunate is between this past week, and next week, being a night game, but it's a Friday night game, you just don't have the opportunity to bring in recruits like you'd want to showcase this environment, to showcase this fan base. And then it kind of comes on you quick, but after this weekend, there's only 3 more Saturday games left. There's only 3 more home recruiting opportunities left for this team. And one of those is going to come in late November when it's going to be probably freezing cold, and that's not always
60 and sunny, Tim. You don't know what you're saying.
Listen, we can hope.
Yeah, Tim's like, maybe he's right. Maybe he's right.
Insert global warming joke.
Yeah, for sure. But Tim, hang tight. I got to ask you about some of the states Nebraska's had success with. One of the big recruiting states in the U.S. So hang on. We'll get there in a moment.
We also need to get a thought on how Christian Jones, his commitment has changed Nebraska's 25 recruiting board.
Okay.
That news last week we can get Tim's thoughts on. So.
Yeah, we'll do that. Tim, hang tight. Get a cocktail or just hang out. Don't go nowhere.
Could
Tim
be
Verghese.
Root beer, Pepsi.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I got to ask Tim what he drinks. Appreciate that. So Tim Verghese continues with us. We'll also hear from Matt Rhule. Monday edition here with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Monday edition, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Some overtime. Tim Verghese with us. InsideNebraskaRivals.com at Tim Verghese. Follow Tim on Twitter. Thanks to all of you joining us in the stream. Dion's asking if Dayton Raiola has an offer yet, Tim, that we can hit on that. I'm interested to get your take, though, on the state of Florida. Florida State is teetering. Florida's fallen over. And then the U is the U. So how open is the border, and who else is headed there? Who's traditionally been strong in Florida? Nebraska's showcasing some kids from Miami, obviously, this 2024 season. But what kind of work can Rhule and company get done in the state of Florida with two of their three powers not what they used to be?
Yeah. First on the Dayton thing, he does have an offer as of right now. We don't know if it's committable or not because he hasn't played a whole lot of varsity ball. He's in the midst of his first varsity season, helped lead Buford to a big rivalry game or it was a televised game against another top Georgia team. He helped lead them to a win on Friday night. Some encouraging flashes there. I think Nebraska's kind of in just a wait and see mode to see what he does this year. See if he has the tools to fit what they want at the quarterback position. I don't think this is going to be a scenario where Nebraska's going to give him a scholarship spot just because of his brother. Like, he's going to have to go out there and earn it. But on the flip side, I do think Dayton's a little more willing, obviously, than Dylan was, just because Dylan is a different type of talent. But Dayton's more willing to potentially come in as one of two quarterbacks in a class and willing to potentially sit for a year or two if needed, or sit for some time to develop if needed. I don't think he's a guy that's going to come on campus and expecting to earn the starting job or anything by any means, but encouraging things from him. As for Florida, it's open. It is open. I'll say that much. I think North Florida, specifically with what Florida and Florida State are doing right now, I think Nebraska's not super invested in Orlando or Tampa like that. But they are very invested in South Florida, specifically Miami, which right now the problem is Miami is having the type of season and recruiting to a level where if they want a guy, they can have him, especially in their backyard. But Nebraska's doing work. They're going to get Jordan Campbell, 2026 4-star linebacker. We have him as the number 49 player in the country per Rivals. He's committed to Miami, and one of the few visits he's making this year, he's coming up to Nebraska on Friday. As we're currently speaking, we'll see if that visit actually comes to fruition, but he's planning to make it up on Friday. So Campbell's one to keep an eye on. And that's a good sign that Nebraska is able to get a Miami commit out of Miami's backyard to come visit. There's opportunity there. I think something I keep coming back to is, I felt going into the year, I felt like Nebraska was kind of pulling out of Florida just because of some of the staff losses. Evan Cooper was a big resource down there. Philip Simpson, both were big resources down there. Now that no longer on staff, you don't necessarily have the personal connections you used to down there. But Jamar Mosey's time at UCF should help you in that Orlando area, in that north part of Florida, that central Florida part of the state. And then, again, just the fact that they have Ja'Cory Barney do what he's doing, Vincent Shavers doing what he's doing, all these different Florida guys doing what they're doing right now, that's making an impact on these guys because all of these guys, they talk about it. These guys love football. So they're all watching college football, maybe more than any other, if you were to put it concentrated high school players in the state watching ball, high school players in the state of, or specifically in Miami, they watch football. They watch all of those games. They care about results. And outside of, the in-state schools, Georgia, LSU, Alabama, those SEC schools that come into Florida, it's Louisville, it's Pitt, and it's Nebraska. Those are the three kind of national programs that can come into Miami pretty consistently and can pull guys out of there because they have a track record of doing it. And Nebraska, it's not just a recent thing. You can go back to DiCaprio Boodle. You can go back to Dwight Boodle's obviously currently on campus. But you can go back so many different years and find different guys from Miami that have relationships down there that have made an impact, that just watching those guys has made an impact. This year is obviously they're going after Cortez Mills, still trying to flip him. And Cortez seeing what these guys are doing on the field, these guys that he's grown up with doing on the field, he feels like he can do the exact same thing. And so Nebraska's making an impact down there with the play. We'll just have to see recruiting-wise, do they have the relationships to actually pull guys out of that region.
Tim, I know he's not from Florida, but there's Florida implications with Chase Lofton. Should Husker fans be paying attention to what's happening there with Florida State?
I think it's worth keeping an eye on. And something I've kind of maintained there is just like if anyone's going to flip him, I still give A&M the edge over Nebraska for a couple of different reasons. The playing time opportunities at Texas A&M, the relationships he's got with Colin Klein, and then their tight ends analyst Christian Ellsworth, who came from Nebraska and went down to A&M. Those two relationships are two of the strongest he's built in his recruitment. And there's other factors involved as well, some family stuff and his girlfriend's going to Dallas Baptist. So I think the opportunity to kind of be in driving distance in the same state is something that he's intrigued by. So I think there's a couple of different factors there, but Nebraska's going to circle back on him. They're going to kick the tires for sure, especially with Florida State having the start to the year that they have. I will say this as well. I've seen some talk about that. I don't think Mike Norvell's getting fired this year. I really don't. I don't think anyone putting him on the hot seat. I think the hot seat's probably fair, but I don't think he's getting close to being fired. I think he's going to have to replace some assistant coaches this year and kind of make some moves in the GM department and some of the front office, quote unquote front office now. He's going to have to make some adjustments, but I think he's safe for at least another year just because of what he's done to this point.
Tim, a question in the stream here from Trevor on Torrey Pittman. The news today, Rivals are obviously ranking him as the number 64 player in the country, number 1 player in the state. You want to get a thought, where does Nebraska stand in that recruitment?
Nebraska's the leader there. It's early, but Nebraska's the leader there. He wants to explore some of these national options. He's got Wisconsin, Notre Dame, and USC. Wisconsin and USC have offers. Notre Dame's monitoring closely. So he wants to get out. He hasn't had a chance to go out and see some of those national options. But just because of where he plays, because of some of the staff at Central and their ties to Nebraska staff, he's been on campus a bunch. He was there pretty much every other week, if not every week he could in the spring. He's been down for 2 games already with his teammate, running back Kylan Haney, who also has a Nebraska offer in 2027. Pittman can be a 5-star. He's everything you really look for in that modern day safety. He's got track testing times that are elite. His on-field play kind of speaks for itself. He had a really good interception last week. He's kind of like a ball hawk, and he's like that modern-day safety you look for. And for a sophomore, you go and look at him just physically, and it's just like, damn, you cannot believe that guy's a sophomore.
Tim, we'll get you out. Thank you much for the update, for the insight, for the analysis. And find Tim Verghese at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Of course, Rivals, that's Inside Nebraska. Tim, we'll see you Friday night, man. Appreciate the thoughts as always.
Yes, sir. Of course. See y'all Friday.
There he is. Good to spend time with Tim Verghese. Appreciate his insight. We'll sneak in some Matt Rhule here before we catch up with Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, a Monday with Charlie, Jay Moore. Also in hour 2, we don't have time right now, but we'll get time to get Matt Rhule's thoughts. We'll ask him. He's been asked to sum up the offensive line as they head into Big Ten play. Also, Matt Rhule, some of his reaction to just what things will be like in situational football. Now, Nebraska, and Tim put it beautifully, when we talk about some of the boxes checked, you beat a rival, you've handled business, and now can you maybe go win a close ball game? That's what it's shaping up to be Friday night, says Vegas. Hail Varsity continues, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Brent has checked into the stream, as has KG earlier. Anonymous says Nebraska has not allowed a person, an opponent, to run for over 100 yards, a single back in 12 games. That's a win. That trend needs to stay real Friday night. Reminder about your friends at Big Brothers and Big Sisters. They empower young people through one-on-one mentoring and those relationships to unlock their full potential. Big Brothers, Big Sisters, or a big couple. Visit mentoromaha.org. Sign up today, and the push continues by October 30th. That's 60 men in 60 days for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. They're on a mission to recruit. They're calling all men in Omaha, the metro area, to step up, become a big brother, and mentor many youths. There's a lot of youths waiting for that big brother or big sister to come into their life. And what is so great about Big Brothers and Big Sisters and mentoromaha.org is just the matching. You get matched up, and that support specialist helps provide just a great fit. And when the littles meet with the bigs, it's twice a month, and it's activities that both can enjoy, right? It's grabbing some ice cream, shooting some hoops, going to a game, video games, just quality time spent with a mentor to help empower young folks and their lives. So sign up today. That push for October 30th continues. 60 men in 60 days. Sign up today. Be a big brother or big sister today. MentorOmaha.org is what you log on to get signed up. Elijah, let's hear from Coach Rhule as he met with the media a little bit earlier today. And how about the offensive line? Can we sneak cut 4 in? He was asked to sum up the O-line so far this season.
We don't know anything about really those guys until we play in the Big Ten. I mean, they've done a really good job versus who we played against. There's always the areas we're always trying to work at, but this will be such a different challenge facing these guys. They have huge guys inside. They have excellent pass rushers on the outside, 9, 17, 3. Now they're playing 17 and 3 together. This is they create 5 one-on-ones, so everyone's got to win. If one guy loses, you struggle. But yeah, I've been pleased with our offensive line. I think they've done a really nice job. I mean, I think anytime you don't punt in a game, you probably feel pretty good. I felt pretty good about what we did on Saturday offensively. But that was all preseason to me. Now the season starts. It's the first game for us in the Big Ten, and we'll find out where we are.
Cut 7 real quick. Heightened stakes. It is Big Ten play. So,
you think about it very simply. Our goal is to go 1-0 every week. Now that we're over with it, though, when you look back on it in hindsight, you go 1-0 in non-conference play, which is what we're supposed to do. Good teams do what they're supposed to do. But now we start the Big Ten. And we're trying to compete to win the Big Ten. That's why we're in it, right? So, all of these games matter. All these games are important. And so this is a great opportunity. It's our first league game. And we didn't certainly approach the preseason like the preseason. But to me, it's just, hey, now we're entering Big Ten play. So our approach doesn't change, but just the gravity of the situation is a little bit different.
We'll hear more from Matt Rhule next hour. Of course, Coach White, Coach Satterfield tomorrow. Handful of players will have that for you as well. But no, it ramps up. It is big for Nebraska we've talked a lot about it this year. Keep that momentum rolling. You have it. You have a home game. You've got a crowd. You got the 400th consecutive sellout. All those things are nice. But when push comes to shove, man, can you be the most physical football team on both sides? You did it a year ago in kind of a pivot point moment after the Michigan beatdown. Can you defend home field? What's Coach McBride think? He's next. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you do it okay. Steven is right. It is Burt Week. It's Coach Bielema coming to town Friday night. 400th consecutive sellout. It's ranked v. ranked, which is awesome for Nebraska. Illinois comes in. We welcome in Mr. Blackshirt to Monday with Charlie, Coach Charlie McBride. Coach, how we doing? How was the weekend? Thanks for the time.
Well, it was good. It would be bad if we had lost. If we had been in a full pout, everybody would be just hard to get along with.
Yeah, there'd be some folks wondering in traffic still if it wouldn't have gone that way. But I want to get your take. You watched Saturday night. Northern Iowa was a little more physical than maybe Nebraska would have liked. Coach Rhule said today 180 yards after contact, running the football. So it wasn't the same level of intensity as Colorado. You still won easily, but to some, it just didn't look like as dominant as it should have. What'd you think?
Well, I'm not sure what they got there. As much as I know about the school itself, when it comes to the football program anymore, I don't know a darn thing, and I've called a couple of friends of mine who live there, and they're kind of out there, out in the woods, and they don't know what's going on. So I don't know whether they practice some days or some days he's making commercials or what.
Yeah. Well, interested here as you go into Illinois. What do you feel good about with this football team, and what questions do you have?
Well, last year I went to the game, and we won the game, but they have a different football team. They have a more mature football team than they had last year, and they got a few more players. They got some receivers that can catch the ball, and anytime you have people like that, you got to be concerned. And the quarterback's playing better, and it's kind of one of those things that you better get prepared, because they're probably right now looking at being better than we are, and that's the way that they're talking, and that's good. I mean, that's the way you want it. Everybody's going to be better than us, right? And that makes the kids have something to prove.
Gotcha.
When they get that feeling that they're told that this team can beat you, you're no good, or you're not good enough to beat this team. All those little comments that people make, it not necessarily the players, but the people and the sports writers, maybe in some cases, and it's good, for us as a team. Now that's going to be their first this away game too. And it'll be a night game. I think it's their first night game. Maybe then they might have had one before, but it's two helps, and it really does. And so it's going to be a tough game, and but I think our fans are. I think we're worth 7 points, and anyway, when you walk into the stadium.
It's Charlie McBride with us here. Talking Nebraska, Illinois coming your way on Friday. And Charlie, before we dive too deep into the woods with that Nebraska-Illinois game, I want to get your thoughts on what we saw Saturday night, particularly with the defense. It was a Northern Iowa team that had the ball for over 38 minutes. They picked up 18 first downs, but still only had 3 points. Overall, with all that in mind, do you feel more encouraged or discouraged by what you saw from the defense?
Well, they probably shut down a little bit. You try to keep the ball as much as they could, but didn't do much good. That's what some teams will do. I think when people get a little discouraged with our team in the second half, they look like that. At times they don't score points, and they don't do this and that. And you got to remember, this is still an evaluation time, and you have to put some people in the floor. You have to find out what they can do, if it's possible. And so a lot of times they try to fit them in, at every position. I mean, there are assistant coaches on the sideline. I don't know whether they're told to, substitute freely or what the case is. It could be anything. But it's the idea that they've got to take a look and see what's really up, because whether they have one more game before they can make a decision on red shirts and so on and so forth. So it's pretty good. I think it leads a little bit of a false impression about our team. Okay. I think we're a good second half team, and we will be.
Coach McBride with us here on Monday with Charlie. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Coach, I'm interested here. Is the next step for this team? They've handled business. They beat a rival in a high-intensity, high-visibility ball game in Colorado. Now, is the next thing to go win a close ball game at home? Could that be part of this setup for Nebraska 2024?
Yeah. Well, it could be. Last week's game, going back to that, it was they're a team that's a lot better than people think they are.
Sure.
They're a good football team, and you look at them year after year after year, what kind of a team they have. They're really a good team. But I think I think we're fortunate in being able to play them.
Mm-hmm.
They're a team you want to play because they can really give you a showdown. But the way they had possession of the football, they went backwards a few times, because of penalties and so forth. That hurt them a lot, and that hasn't been much said about it, but. That's one of the things, and just the same old stuff that happened to us, illegal procedure, and then one a couple of times they were pushing guys out the sideline and about 3 yards off the field, and and things like that. But looking at the game that in that manner. I think that we had good play against a good football team and a better team than the score would indicate.
It's Charlie McBride with us here, and Charlie, fair to say you're gonna learn more about your team and get better more after a performance that leaves you feeling unsatisfied as a coaching staff, as a team.
Yeah, you're going to find out. One of the things that happened that people may not think much about. The tight end who's a freshman gets a touchdown, and Nelson. He's excited about it, but it's a fact that he's got some confidence, and I'm sure. He picked up a few friends, on the way, with the team. But that's the way you get to know people, is you score touchdowns for them, and they're going to get to know you. But as a simple example, it's a little harder with linemen because they aren't in that position to catch a touchdown pass. But that's one thing that you can look at. That I think that happens is that somebody will show something. One of our guards is hurt, so we get, you put Henry in there, and he's just knocking people all over the place, and he hasn't got any consistency of letting the coaches see him do that. Mm-hmm. But now he did, and he played pretty good. So they're not afraid to put him in the game. It's always that second thought. You can talk. Coaches can talk a good game, but then it comes to doing it and putting a kid in the game, they kind of back down. It's kind of like being a chicken.
Coach, I wanted to get your thoughts on Nebraska's run game. There's good balance on offense. Dillon's played really well at quarterback. Nebraska's got a lot of weapons, but you're going to make your money running the football in the Big Ten. Do you feel good about Nebraska's run game heading into conference play?
I thought it got better. Each week they've done a little something better, in their running game. And it's just I can see the players getting better. I can see them with more confidence when they're running the football. The first time you run, that it's like you need to stay in the game for a little bit so you can get the feel of the game. You can't play one play and then come out, play another play and then come out. They can't always do that. Now they do it in pro ball because that's their business, but that you learn to do it that way. But with us, it's getting the idea that they get some time. They got a little more. Some players got a little more time in there, and we were able to take a better look at them. And I think in that case, that's why you're seeing some of the. I thought they ran tougher than they've run in any other games, and that was good to see. And I'm sure that they can get tougher than that. So it's good, and the same thing with receivers. Mm-hmm. You get to see a kid catch the ball and you haven't even heard his name before, mm-hmm. And that's what they're looking for. And so all of that to me, each week I think they've done a terrific job of advancing their team and taking the time, but doing it the right way.
Coach, we'll wind down with this, and wanted to get your take on Coach Bielema, of course, coming from Wisconsin, knows the Big Ten well, and his teams are always ready for a bar fight. They're going to be tough on the lines of scrimmage.
Yeah, I know him a little bit, but he's a well prepared coach. He's I've spent some time up at Wisconsin when Dave Dorn was there. Dave's the head coach at North Carolina State now, but and I got to know him a little bit, and he is very, very, very disciplined coach, and he has he has a plan, and he has a good one. All of his teams, if you look at them, they're tough. They'll be a bunch of tough guys. They may, like last year when we were down there, I was impressed. They lost, but they could scrap the whole time, and they didn't give up at all. And that's kind of what you look for in a coach's team. Is those kind of things, those things you can't coach that they come up. Each individual coach comes up with a player that he's better than he thought he was, and that's the fun about coaching. You see these kids get advance, and it's great.
It's Charlie McBride with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Charlie, with that Nebraska-Illinois game Friday night, I want to get your thoughts with a Brett Bielema coach team. We've seen him plenty at Wisconsin. We've seen him enough at Illinois now. We kind of know what you're going to expect. Is he going to out-athlete you, out-talent you? No, probably not, but he's going to want to out-physical you. Fundamental football. They don't turn the football over. They get takeaways. Right. How do you beat a team like that?
Right. Keep the ball. Run the football down their throat. And show them who's boss. And that's the one way to do it. There's always a negative feeling in a person, and if you get after them right away, you can't come out second quarter, third quarter, and decide you're going to play. You got to come on the first play, and that back gets the ball. I mean, he wants to feel like the stadium fell on top of him. It's a matter of really showing people who's the better player, and that's where I think that you got to watch out. If you don't start fast with Illinois and you don't get after them right away, you could run into some problems.
That's a good note, specifically with how Nebraska started ball games, outscoring their opponents. So we'll see how it shakes out Friday night. Coach, enjoy football this Friday and this weekend, and we'll give you a shout next week, okay?
Okay, I'll be watching close as ever.
I bet. Thanks, Coach.
A lot. Okay, bye now.
There he is, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. A Monday with Charlie. Good to get his take on things. Appreciate his insight. And, simple as that. Go show him who's boss. Nebraska did that a year ago. Mr. Van Poppel, 4th and goal. That big-time stop. You had the back shoulder gain of 30, and then you're off to the races, and Nebraska scores and then doesn't trail. They win that thing by 13 points. Kind of a surprise win, quite honestly.
That was an eye-bleach game.
A little bit.
Remember, looking back, the goal line stop was cool. There was about 0 moments of true excitement after that in that game, and that's okay. A win's a win.
Well, Matthew checks in, and it is a real statement here from Matthew. Special teams can't be a liability. Need them to be an asset.
It's solid fundamental football. That's what got Nebraska the win last year against Illinois. That's what you'll need this year. That's how you beat, as Charlie said, it's taking care of the football, playing fundamentals.
Yep. Jay Moore checks in from Big Red Wrap-Up. Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore as the Blackshirt Hour continues with Hail Varsity.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. The Blackshirt Hour continues. It's Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up. You find Jay on Twitter at JMoore44. Just like you had written it up in the old Jay Moore garage in ink, Nebraska 3-0, headed into Illinois. Right, Jay Bird? How we doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's about where they thought. Where I definitely thought they'd be heading into Big Ten play. I like where things are at right now. I know some things, some fans and listeners might not be as happy or as optimistic where things are at after, some defensive play on Saturday. But listen, I'm not too concerned. I think there's elements of a little bit of a letdown, and they were shorthanded for a little bit in the defense, and they listened to how well they played against Colorado, and Northern Iowa was told that they didn't stand a chance, and they came out and they're physical. But listen, I think they're in a good spot. I think it's okay. I think this was definitely a little eye-opening for them, and it's something that Coach White and Coach Rhule can get on them a little bit and say, hey, you come to play like this again against Illinois on Friday night, things aren't going to go your way. So, listen, 31-point win. From afar, if you didn't look at the box score or watch the game, some people are like, Nebraska took care of business. I mean, Northern Iowa had some opportunities and moved the ball, and they did a good job owning the time of possession. I mean, they snapped that thing with 2 to 3 seconds left on that play clock, darn near every play. And so they wanted to shorten that game. Offensively, too, they scored fast. So that was part of the deal as well. But a little concerning at times that the Northern Iowa's offense looked like the more physical team at times. But when plays need to be made, they stepped up, made plays. And listen, it's one of those games after that, especially after that Colorado game, heading to Big Ten play on a short game or a short week. You get out of there, you got a rather comfortable win. Your two's got a lot of playing time, and it's behind you, right? You learn from it. It's behind you. Now it's go time. Now it's these 9 games that are very, very critical to your season, and it's time to put on your big boy pants and go play some football.
It's Jay Moore with us here. And Jay, do you think in a roundabout way it could be a reason for encouragement that Nebraska had a comfortable 31-point victory despite the fact that it really didn't feel like anyone was on their A game? I think you had some guys that are maybe on their B game. Other guys in the defense kind of felt like it was a C game type moment for them. Is it in any way a reason for encouragement that they did that? They got a 31-point victory despite not being their best, or am I looking at it through rose-tinted glasses?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's definitely kind of a meh kind of performance, but they won by 31 points. In years past, I think
it's 4-quarter game.
Rather more encouraged by this win. But I mean, Nebraska's in years past, we've seen them lose these type of games, whether it's Georgia Southern or struggling against North Dakota and South Dakota State and McNeese State and all these games that they've tend to fall asleep on sometimes. And I mean, I think you can take it. I view it as, listen, I think defensively they tried some things. I think Northern Iowa is a pretty good football team. The offensive line is pretty solid. I think they are probably the best offensive line we've faced so far through 3 games. So they came in and they got aggressive. They were physical, and that's good. It's time. You're going to play 9 more physical offensive lines the rest of this year. So if it was a bad, if they own the line of scrimmage and they didn't do anything, I think you could look at it, and I'm in this boat as well, that it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice they came here and got punched in the mouth a little bit, because that's what's going to happen the next nine weeks is physical football, Big Ten South football. So let's come in here, let's get our eyes opened up a little bit, let's get bloodied up a little bit and realize, hey, we run our best, we got to be better, we got to prepare better. It's a short week, and we got to get ready to go, and I think that's just fine. Listen, it's such a lose-lose situation when you play these teams. Listen, if they would have won 62-3, people are like, who cares? It's Northern Iowa. But it's a close game. It's like, oh, you struggle against Northern Iowa. So overall, like I said, put this one behind you. You learn from it, and I think they're going to be better after it. And you got to get ready to go in a short week to play Bielema and his gang, and they're going to be physical as well. And I think there's definitely was more to gain from this game than actually, what actually happened.
Jay Moore's with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio. A few more thoughts on Nebraska, Northern Iowa. And Jay, I've looked at these non-conference games, and I'm trying to apply to this Big Ten slate. And I know it's each game, each matchup, they're not all created equal, other than the similarity, to your point and Elijah's talk, is it is going to be, warfare on those trenches week in, week out. And so how deep and talented are you on the lines of scrimmage? How much do you survive? That's going to be pretty important. I want to get your take on Nebraska's run game. And what do you believe going into Big Ten play right now about Nebraska's run game? And then maybe even a bigger question is the offense. How do you think the offense is going to function Friday and beyond? Are you feeling good about what they have aside from quarterback? Because Nebraska can carve up, and Nebraska's got a quarterback most teams don't have. But to win, you're going to have to run.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And they ran it at times, and there's a few times Northern Iowa was downhill and played aggressive. And when you load up the box, you bring some guys. Listen, you're going to be able to get home with bringing more guys than what you left in the formation to block. So I understand that as well. I love the fact that Nebraska's been so balanced, and I want them to be able to be a dominant running football team. But sometimes you gotta take what the defense is giving you. And if they're going to say, "Hey, Nebraska's not going to run the football, and we're going to let this young quarterback try to beat us," okay, we will, because we got some weapons. You have. I mean, we have 4 legit weapons that we can get the ball to. That's not a running back. I mean, you go to Nayor, Banks, Barney, Fedoni, and maybe you throw Carter Nelson now in the mix. Okay, fine. Put 8 in the box. We'll do some play action or some quick game stuff or whatever it is. But guess what? You want to bring pressure? We'll get it. We'll get it to Ramir out of the backfield. We'll get to Emmett Johnson out of the backfield. So I think there's multiple things you can do. But yeah, I'd love to be able to run ISOs and counters and inside zones against defenses all day, but they're going to, that's defensive one-on-one football. Stop the run first. So that's what teams are going to try to do. And ideally, you'd like to run the ball, even when defenses know that you're going to run the ball. But sometimes you gotta take the top off. You got to threaten them. So I think the offense is in a great position right now, just because they have been so balanced. They've shown they've been able to do both, and you just pick your poison. I think that's the nice thing about where this offense is now. Is like you got to deal. We got some dudes now. It's you got to pick which one you want to mess with. So I'm not concerned at all with this with the offense. They're in a great spot, man. They are. I that was my biggest question mark coming into this year offensively, was just what is it going to look like with the true freshman quarterback? And so far through 3 games, I know you're not playing the 85 Bears by any means, but it's looked better than I thought, and Dylan's performed better than I thought, and we've had guys step up, and with all these new faces and young guys step up, it's been fun. There are multiple. There's so many different things they can attack you with, and you've seen it. I mean, we're playing our backup quarterback sometimes, catching choice routes out of the backfield. Mm-hmm. So they're utilizing all athletes, all weapons. And they're gonna find a way to beat you and take advantage of whatever you're not good at, one way or the other. So I think that's just the kind of the beauty of it right now with what Sat's kind of put together and kind of game plan through three games. And you've seen it multiple ways. You've seen a lot of guys play this game. You saw fewer guys probably play in the Colorado game. You saw multiple guys play against Northern Iowa. So once you get down to Big Ten play, it's probably going to be more like what you probably saw against Colorado, where maybe it's just a couple running backs and you have more consistent play from your starters. This is going to have to be, right, because they're going to be closer games. But I'm telling you what, a lot of guys got reps, and you've seen a lot of different ways that they're trying to attack defenses. And it just, as a defensive coordinator trying to get ready for them, there's a lot they've thrown and put out there that you got to get ready for, Monday through Friday.
Jay, with what you just said, the different types of ways that Nebraska's offense attacks defense is making it tough on them. With that in mind, do you think it's necessary for Nebraska's offense to develop a bread and butter this year? I don't know if I've seen an offensive identity that to me is like, oh, this is their bread and butter plays. This is what they're going to want to do every single game. Does Nebraska need that this year?
I don't know. I mean, again, I'd love for them to being able to run the ball, but I think when you got a quarterback who can throw it as well, you're gonna want to utilize them. I think their bread and butter is balance. I really do. I think they're, and it's multiple ways. It's a lot of different ways. I mean, the Barney touchdown, that's a run play, but sometimes he goes in front of the quarterback and you toss him. It's a 2-yard pass, and that's a pass play. There's just different ways to get running backs in space, and a lot of different looks, bubble screens, and just different concepts that they're attacking teams with. That's just kind of been fun to see and fun to watch, and the big play aspects there. But I think they can slow it down too, and do some things. And but I think the best part of it is balance. You got to respect them. I mean, I don't know what it is after this past game, but I mean they were averaging 240 in the air and 190 on the ground. That's pretty solid. That's nice to have, and I got to imagine it's probably a little heavier weighted towards the pass. Even though Emmett Johnson's run was a nice one in the fourth quarter, but I think balance is a key for this offense going forward. And again, it's just whether or not who you want to stop from the defensive side of the football going against this offense.
Blackshirt Hour continues. Jay Moore with us, an extended sit down at JMoore44. Catch his thoughts. Big Red wrap up. That's Tuesday nights on Nebraska Public Media. So, Jay, we've spent plenty of time on Nebraska, their past ball game against Northern Iowa. We've talked about Illinois. You have been able to observe Bielema's stops in his career back in Illinois, got him to a bowl game, almost took out a playoff Michigan team, really took a step back last season, and inherited some good dudes from Lovey. Now Illinois kind of raised some eyebrows. They got a nice win at home against KU. KU's scuffling a little bit, but I think they'll get things figured out. What do you believe about this Illinois team? We know they're physical, but from an offensive standpoint, I mean, Altmaier's ran it for about 75 yards. There's been some QB run, not a ton, but enough to mess with you. The running back gets a ton of yards after contact. And then defensively, they lost some dudes to the NFL, but it sounds like their edge guys are pretty good. It's going to be maybe a little tighter ball game. Could be a 4-quarter ball game for Nebraska this Friday.
Oh, it's definitely going to be a 4-quarter ball game. I feel confident about that. I think Bielema is such a good coach, and whether he's, obviously he was so dominant at Wisconsin and not as dominant at Arkansas, and then kind of gotten things going a little inconsistent at Illinois, but I mean, that defense he had just a couple of years ago, I mean, those guys were, with Witherspoon and all those guys in the secondary, I mean, that was incredible. I mean, that was like a number one scoring defense, I think, that year nationally. So
physical.
Yeah, very, very physical. But that's what I expect to see from Bielema's teams in Illinois. They're going to be physical. They want to get downhill in the run game. You're going to utilize some QB in the run game. So defense is going to get stressed. When you have a QB that can run it and shows they can run it, I mean, that's 11 guys got to be accounted for. And it stresses your safeties out in your secondary because it forces them to play the run game well, and your linebackers got to be on point. But I expect this 100% to be a 4-quarter ball. I think Nebraska's a better team. I'll say that, but we know how that's been before, just with a short week. And I know Kansas at just a couple weeks ago, they turned the ball over 4 times, and a lot of it was in the red zone. And then I know Illinois was up 13-6 at half against Central Michigan and ended up winning 30-9 and for a more dominant performance. But it's almost now that it's in Big Ten play, it's just almost like the preseason, right? In NFL, it's done. It's kind of over with, and you got to see what teams are made of. It's just whatever you kind of done not preseason, but non-conference is not thrown out the window. But it's like, it doesn't really matter anymore. It's Big Ten football now. It's different. We've learned that the hard way, right? We thought coming from the Big 12, it's like, we see you guys in all these 13-10 and 17-14 and 21-17 low-scoring ball games. We're going to come in here and and dice you up. And we're like, This is real man football, and it's physical. Teams take care of the football. It's discipline. The teams play all three phases very well. It's, in Illinois has a hell of a kicker, so they'll be able to get some points on that side of it as well. I think it's going to be a really close ball game. I think Nebraska's got to be able to run the football. On the other side, we got to be able to stop the run and force them into obvious passing downs. And if we can do that, we'll be just fine. But I think it's going to be a fairly lower scoring game overall. But I think our explosiveness on offense, and I think our defense will blow up and make some stops. Will just be a little too much for the Fighting Illini, even on a short week.
Jay, with everything you just said in that answer, not just with Illinois, but with football in the Big Ten, how stylistically so many teams are kind of similar in how they win football games. Your biggest concern following the non-conference slate for this Husker football team in terms of how they match up with the Big Ten is what?
It's kicking game.
Okay.
That's a big concern. I mean, could have kicked about a 42-yarder on Saturday night and went for it and didn't get it. I'd like to see them go and maybe get Albano some confidence. But that's a little concerning to me when points are a premium and close games, right, where they're low scoring. And sometimes it's going to come down to a kick at the end or getting a kick with, less than a minute left and, your opponent's going to get the ball with no timeouts and it's up to your defense to make, a stop. But, in years past, we've been in those situations. We've missed it, and then they get a couple first downs and they go out and kick it, right, whether it's Iowa or teams in the past. I've done that. Special teams is a premium in the Big Ten. You see it year in, year out. That's why Iowa's been able to be so good when they haven't had an offense, is because they know they play good defense. They flip the field. Mm-hmm. And they get the ball at their 50, maybe get a field goal or a first down, they kick a field goal. And they know how to get it done. So that's concerning. It's going to be close ball. Sometimes there's going to be some tight ball games where getting 3 points is good. So that is, I'd say that's probably the biggest concern. And I mean, just the way our defense overall, I mean, I'm slightly concerned. I'm not like over here thinking we need to reconstruct our defense by any means, but just the way Northern Iowa kind of got after us a little bit, physicality wise on Saturday night was a little bit of a shock. I will say that, but I think they'll bounce back fine. There's enough leadership and good players, and guys are old enough, and you have Bayer for the majority of the game, and Jamari Butler didn't play for all of the game, so I think they'll be just fine. But I think initially, special teams is definitely, the kicking game is definitely a concern when points are a premium against all these, when you get these close games in the Big Ten.
Jay Moore's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Jay, will wrap with this kind of concern part two. I think Nebraska needs Micah Mazuka. That being said, you got to follow rules, is what we'll say, and he is getting to watch the game against Illinois. Good news is he's back. Got to stay back, though. So I thought Henry played well, but Mazuka's he's a tone setter, man.
No, he is. He's nasty. He's a nasty downhill physical player. That's what we need. It hurts us not having him, and hopefully he learns his lesson from whatever disciplinary reason that he found himself in. But yeah, he's a tone setter for sure, and you need guys on your offensive line like that. And look, Henry Lutovsky came in, he did fine, but it's different, right? It's just different through a couple games. So hopefully he's learned his lesson, and hopefully it doesn't cause too much issues, right, on Friday night against Illinois. So hopefully he gets back here and gets right for Purdue, and then you got to bye after that. So you got to have them. You got to have all five guys, and that's already been a thin spot as well on the offensive line. You can't. It's one thing for injuries, but you can't allow yourself to miss games for being a knucklehead or being undisciplined or whatever it is that got him in this mess. So hopefully, like you said, things can be resurrected, and he's back here in a couple of weeks. But he's going to be missed for sure.
Jay, last thought here, about 30 seconds. With Nebraska playing on Friday night, that leaves a Saturday open. What are you doing on your Saturday afternoon?
There could be some golf potentially in my future, and there's a lot of watching football comfortably at my house with with some cold beverages in hand.
Beer, golf, football, says Jay Moore. That is the prescription for.
It's like wedding crashes, right? It's 3 things we do in Maryland, but in my world, it's in the fall in Nebraska: beer, golf, and football.
Sailing, crab cakes, football.
Yeah.
Jay, we'll check in next week. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks, boys.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
And down a Monday edition, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Thanks to all of you for checking us out in the stream and jumping in YouTube. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter, and Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the podcast download. Give us a review, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take it. Appreciate all you chiming in. Trevor's calling his shot from a prop standpoint. He says Nebraska, the Blackshirts hold Illinois under 300 yards total offense, which is cool. Tiger Shark is in. He's been in for a while. Says we're 3-0 since Elijah started sleeping in the studio. Pretty nice. The other Elijah
and I've
says,
also saved so much on rent.
I know.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's too bad it's 400 degrees in here.
That's on me.
What'd you do?
Oh, I like sleeping warm, you know.
Okay,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, there's no blankets in here, so you have to make do.
Okay, Tuck is like, I'm going reverse psychology here. I gave up making the top 5, but gunning for the last mention, the last spot. He's getting the order after all. Ronnie is in. So, yeah, check us out on the streams. Check us out on the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Upset that shocked you most in the NFL. Was it Raiders over Ravens? Was it, I would say, Tampa over Detroit? Or San Fran getting whacked by Minnesota and Dwight Schrute?
Can we talk about the Cardinals laying the beat down on the Rams? I'm not that surprised that the Cardinals won a football game, but 41-10.
The meanest thing I saw on Twitter today was a picture of Starvin Marvin Jr. with his quarterback.
With Kyler, and you can only see the top of Kyler's head.
Yeah. Look at this connection. Vic, it wasn't Denver, just saying, apparently.
There was a lot. I mean, the Saints, again, not surprised they beat the Cowboys, but 44-19.
That was brutal. Oh, David Carr, man.
Derek Carr?
Yeah, that one too.
Yeah, that one too. Yeah.
The other Carr, the one that stayed in the league.
I was gonna go Alvin Kamara with his 4 touchdowns.
he was nails.
That dude just doesn't age.
What a ball game between the Chiefs and Bengals. Cam Taylor-Britt showing out. That was incredible, but too many second half turnovers.
And a bailout call.
Yeah.
It was a penalty, but it also was a bailout.
But listen, if you're a dude, and we all think Jamar Chase is a dude, you can't do that to your team. Because Cincy's got a hell of a kicker, too.
Mm-hmm.
And at least Cincinnati looks somewhat back. But I didn't know Zach Taylor's 1-12 in the first 2 weeks till yesterday. Not good. But I think Cincinnati will be fine. They just have a tougher shot of getting into the postseason. Statistically speaking, KC is 2-0. And had some friends that went down to that. Loved it. Raucous environment. Always a high-level ball game between these two squads.
Yeah. Schmidt, before we get out here.
Yes.
Do you want to redeem yourself for steaking a beer on Friday night?
Did I not say the wrong team was favored?
You did.
I wanted Buffalo. You wanted to take Buffalo. You took Buffalo. I think this line is laughably low, don't you?
Tonight?
Yes.
Eagles 6.5 is what I'm seeing.
I see 5.5 right now.
I'll let you go up to 6.5 if you want. I'd still take the Eagles.
Well, yeah.
That's a problem.
I need 13.5 to take Atlanta.
I guess no steak and a beer bet then. We're on the same page.
Not today. Talk to you tomorrow at 4. Thank you.